Jack Nicklaus and Tiger Woods dominate the conversation for golf's greatest ever player. But there's one man who sits in the shadows. One man who many golf enthusiasts believe might actually be better than both of them. That man is Ben Hogan. From his ball striking to his beautiful swing and being the first ever golfer to normalize practicing, which led him to win 5 tournaments that he entered out of 6 in a single year, only stopped from becoming even greater by tragedy and bad timing. So what happened? To answer that question, we have to go back to 1912 in Stephenville, Texas. He was the third and youngest child of Chester and Clara Hogan. His father was a blacksmith, but it's safe to say that Ben's parents struggled financially throughout his childhood, doing their best to take care of their 3 children and make ends meet. Ben would start work at an early age to try and help support his struggling parents, but tragically, his father wasn't able to deal with the stresses of life, and when Ben was only 9 years old, he took his own life in their family home. It has never been confirmed by Ben himself, but it was rumoured that he did it in front of Ben, potentially the reason behind his introverted personality in his later years. After his death, his mother took on a job as a seamstress. His eldest brother took on a job as a delivery boy, and at first, Ben sold newspapers after school, before someone suggested he take up a role as a caddy at a local golf club. That was potentially the best thing that anyone ever said to him. It took him to Glen Garden Country Club, a 9-hole course located 3 miles away from his home. One of his fellow caddies would end up being his future rival, and also one of his greatest ever friends, Byron Nelson. The two would tie for the lead at the annual Christmas Caddy Tournament in December of 1927, when both were just 15 years of age. Nelson sank a 30-foot putt to tie on the 9th and final hole, and instead of sudden death, they played another 9 holes. Nelson sank another long putt on the final green to win by a single stroke. The following spring, Nelson was granted the only junior membership offered by the members of Glen Garden, and club rules didn't allow caddies to be over the age of 16, leaving the two being separated, and Ben forced to take his golf to daily fee courses, Casey Lake, Worth Hills, and Z-Bows. He continued to improve his golf game, beginning to develop the incredible dedication that led people to say that he invented golf practice. Hogan himself said, "You hear stories about me beating my brains out practicing, but I was enjoying myself. Couldn't wait to get up in the morning just so I could hit more balls. When I'm hitting the ball where I want, hard and crisply, it's a joy that very few people experience." He was one of the first players to match particular clubs to yardages, or reference points around the course, such as bunkers or trees, to improve his distance control. This level of discipline and detail would go on to be a staple of his golf game that we will go over more later, and is likely why the self-proclaimed golf scientist Bryson DeChambeau refers to him as his hero. Ben would go on to drop out of high school during the final semester of his senior year, and turned pro 6 months shy of his 18th birthday at the Texas Open in San Antonio. 2 years later, at a country club in Cleburne, he'd meet a girl once again who had went to his high school, Valerie Fox. He'd taken a low-paying job as a club pro in the same city that by chance she had also moved into. In 1935, they married in her parents' home, but it's safe to say the pair would struggle. His early years as a pro were not easy, and he didn't see instant success, reportedly going broke more than once. He didn't even win his first tournament until 10 years after turning pro in March of 1940. Valerie, however, had never doubted him, and knew that one day his dedication to his craft would bring them all the success that they could have ever dreamed of. And it turned out that once he won one tournament, he'd never stop winning. He won 3 consecutive events in North Carolina at the age of 27, and despite finishing 13th on the money list in 1938, he took up a job as an assistant pro at the Century Country Club in New York. He'd work there for a further 3 years, and even be promoted to head pro, but ultimately would take a job as the head pro at Hershey Country Club in Pennsylvania instead. But it was safe to say that Ben Hogan had now entered his golfing prime, and from the years of 1938 to 1959, he won 63 professional tournaments, including the PGA Championship twice, the US Open, the Vardon Trophy 3 times, and was awarded annually for the lowest stroke average in the PGA. In the years 1940, 41, 42, 46, and 48, he was the highest earning player on the PGA by a mile. But here is the heartbreaking reason why these earnings and his career wins weren't 2 or 3 times higher. From the years of 1943 to 1945, he served in the US Army Air Force, where he was stationed locally at Fort Worth and became a utility pilot with the rank of lieutenant. If you imagine how bad your swing feels after not playing for a couple weeks, imagine how bad you'd get if you stopped playing for months, if not years at a time. But thankfully, he'd return home safe and sound after his service. But the same can't be said for the tragedy that struck in 1949. Driving home to Fort Worth after a Monday playoff loss at the 1949 Phoenix Open, both he and Valerie suffered a head-on collision with a Greyhound bus. It was a foggy night, and Ben had reduced his speed, driving carefully in the low visibility conditions. Sadly, the same couldn't be said for the driver of the Greyhound bus, who was attempting to pass another vehicle on a narrow bridge, which left Ben with no room to try and avoid the crash, leaving him and the love of his life with no choice but to brace for impact and pray for their lives. Ben bravely threw himself over Valerie to protect her, but he saved himself in the progress, with the driving column of the car penetrating the driver's seat. The accident left Ben, now aged 36, with a double fracture of his pelvis, a fractured collarbone, a left ankle fracture, a chipped rib, and multiple near-fatal blood clots. The doctors said he'd have lifelong circulation problems and other physical limitations, saying it was unlikely that he'd ever walk again, let alone play golf. He was in the prime of his career, and in the blink of an eye, a man that could have gone on to be the greatest golfer of all time was stopped unfairly in his tracks through no fault of his own. He left the hospital 59 days after the accident. But Ben knew better than the doctors. He had been through hard times since he came out of the womb, and the one thing that kept him going from giving up in life was golf. No one was going to tell him that he couldn't ever play the sport again that he loved. One way or another, he'd get back on the golf course. And miraculously, he did. He regained his strength by walking insanely long distances at a time, and even resumed playing golf as best he could in November of that same year. This was an Army veteran who had seen his father die in front of him and seen hardship for both himself and his family and his wife throughout his entire life. This alone makes his comeback a heartwarming story by itself. He returned to the PGA Tour at the start of the 1950 season at the Los Angeles Open, where he found himself tied with Sam Snead over 18 holes, but unfortunately ended up losing in the playoff. But considering just a year earlier, he was told that he'd never walk again, this was a pretty good first appearance back, to say the least. Following his recovery, Hogan won the US Open a staggering 3 more times, the Masters tournament twice, and the British Open on his first attempt in the competition. 1953 saw him winning 5 of 6 tournaments that he entered, including 3 major championships, a feat known as the Triple Crown of golf. It still stands to this day as one of the greatest single seasons in the history of professional golf. The only reason he wasn't able to complete the Grand Slam in a single season was because the dates of the Open and the PGA Championship overlapped, rather stupidly, but he at least won the Open that he was able to attend. It is the only time that a golfer has won 3 majors in a single season, apart from Tiger Woods when he did the same thing in 2000. In his later years, he began to decline the opportunity to play the PGA Championship more and more often, and there were 2 main reasons for it. The first reason was that it was match play until 1958, and Ben preferred shooting a number, meticulously planning and executing on a game plan to achieve a score for a round on a particular course. The second reason was because it required several days of 36 holes per day competition, and after his car accident, this was one of the few physical feats that he wasn't able to manage. But his wins weren't the only thing that made him stand out as one of the greats. It was also his swing theory. A young Hogan struggled massively with hooking the golf ball, which he later spent thousands of hours to fix, reportedly down to using a strong grip with hands more on the right of the club, making his swings less consistent. But it was the only way that he was able to compete in distance with his larger opponents. Ben Hogan was only 5'8" and 145 pounds, but he was very long off the tee early in his career. Like many other professional golfers of his day, he competed regularly in long drive contests to show off his impressive distance. His swing in later years produced the famed Hogan fade, lower than usual for a great player and from left to right. This was due to the fix that he had found for his dreaded hook, a combination of a weak grip and a draw type swing, all but eliminating the possibility of a hook. Both him and Mo Norman practiced without gloves, leaving Tiger Woods to say that they were the only players ever to have complete control over their golf swings, and complete control of the ball flight and direction of the ball. The two are still considered by many as the greatest ball strikers the world has ever seen. In 1967, the book the golf swing, watched every shot that a 54-year-old Hogan hit in the Colonial National Invitational. Over the 4 days, 141 hit the green, with 139 of them being rated from well executed to superbly executed. The remaining 2 shots were a fairway miss by 5 yards and a 5-iron that landed 5 yards short of the green. That's a level of consistency that even to this day is unheard of. But what about the secrets that he claimed he had that made his swing nearly automatic, removing any doubt or thinking time whenever he approached the ball? The first theory was that he had a special wrist movement known as cupping under, but many believed that Hogan hadn't revealed all that he knew. And it wasn't until 1955 that a book written named Afternoons with Mr. Hogan revealed that the second element of his secret was the way in which he used his right knee to initiate the swing, which was critical to the correct setting of the wrist. In many ways, as mentioned earlier, he is very similar to Bryson DeChambeau, spending hours upon hours mastering every scientific factor of his swing and his golf game. Many believe that he was truly the greatest golfer of all time, and if it wasn't for his service and his car accident, that he truly would have been better than any of the talent to come after him, such as Tiger Woods and Jack Nicklaus. If you want to learn more about their golf careers, click on one of these videos. You'll learn everything there is to know.